The first time he looked at me, he smiled like I was furniture. "Cute face," he said, adjusting the cuffs of a suit that probably cost more than my rent. "But this is a serious company, sweetheart. Try not to get in the way. Some insults slap you. Others sharpen you. That one became a blade. My name is Julia Hayes. I was 32 years old, and for 6 years I had built the invisible machinery that kept Ethan Tech alive. I wasn't reception. I wasn't branding. I wasn't someone hired to brighten a room. I was the lead architect behind the intelligence engine that powered every major product the company sold. And the man who had just dismissed me. He was Ethan Vale, the owner's son. My new boss. The kind of man who inherited confidence the way other people inherit eye color. He stood outside the executive office, smelling like expensive cologne and bad decisions, while employees nearby pretended not to listen. I said nothing. Just looked at him. Then I looked at the office door behind him, and suddenly everything made sense. The old CEO had retired the week before. Quietly. No farewell party, no grand speech. Just gone. Control of the company had shifted to an investment group run by Richard Vale, Ethan's father. By Monday morning, the prince had arrived to claim the kingdom. He thought I was part of the furniture. A tiny plant that had survived years of fluorescent lighting better than most employees survived management. Behind me, Ethan laughed. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "You'll do fine here if you stay pleasant." I zipped my bag. What he didn't know was that 3 years earlier, after one too many corporate promises, I had protected myself. Every major system I built had been patented under my own name before licensing agreements were finalized. Perfectly legal. Written into my contract. Signed by legal. Approved by executives too distracted to imagine a day like this. The neural engine. The predictive compression layer. The adaptive security protocol. 6 patents. All mine. The company had licenses to use them. Temporary licenses. And those licenses expired in 9 days. I walked toward the elevator. "Where are you going?" Ethan called. I pressed the button. "You have meetings," I said. "I have leverage." The elevator doors closed on his grin. By the time I got home, rain was hitting the windows like thrown gravel. I made coffee, opened my personal server, and reviewed every file. Time-stamped builds. Version logs. Original source drafts. Patent filings. Cloud backups in 3 locations. Everything clean. Everything mine. The next morning I arrived before sunrise. The office was mostly dark, but light spilled from the glass conference room. Inside, Ethan paced with 2 consultants in tailored coats. Slides glowed across the wall. Project Titan. Our upcoming launch. The product everyone had worked on for 18 months. The product investors were flying in to see. The product built around my engine. Without my systems, Titan wasn't revolutionary software. It was a glossy shell with dead wiring. At 10, Richard Vale entered the office like a man expecting applause. Silver hair. Perfect watch. Predator calm. He introduced Ethan as the future of the company. Spoke about modernization. Efficiency. Fresh leadership. Then Ethan took the floor. He talked about eliminating redundancy. Prioritizing talent. Removing obstacles. When he said obstacles, his eyes found me. That's when I knew. They weren't here to lead. They were here to replace anyone smart enough to notice what they were stealing. That night, one of the engineers called me. Voice low. You didn't hear this from me, he whispered. They are demanding full architecture maps of your engine. Source pathways too. Not documentation. Extraction. They were trying to gut the machine while pretending it was teamwork. The next day I found 3 meetings added to calendars I'd never been invited to. Consultants had repository access. External downloads had begun. And Ethan sat in the conference room, leaning back in a leather chair, while my system diagrams covered the wall behind him. Like a thief hosting a museum tour. At lunch, he stopped by my desk with coffee in hand. Morning, Julia. We're aligning teams. I kept typing. Is that what you call unauthorized access? He smiled wider. Transparency builds trust. I looked up. And theft builds lawsuits. For 1 second, his expression slipped. Then he laughed. No one's stealing from you. It belongs to the company. No. The office belonged to the company. The desks belonged to the company. The illusion belonged to the company. But the engine belonged to me. That afternoon I called our in-house attorney, Daniel Mercer. He sounded tired before I even spoke. I can't advise much on a recorded line, he said carefully. But gather every document proving independent development. They are already making claims. A pause. Richard has been telling the board the core technology is fully internalized. My chest went cold. That phrase mattered. It implied ownership. They weren't just stealing. They were building a lie sturdy enough to survive court. So I went back to work. At midnight, while janitors vacuumed empty halls, I sat alone under office lights and prepared for war. I organized logs. Verified timestamps. Archived source histories. Encrypted evidence. Then I emailed my patent lawyer. Subject line. Accelerate enforcement. Launch day was 7 days away. I intended to let them walk all the way to the stage before the floor disappeared. By Wednesday, invitations for the launch went company-wide. Investors. Media. Clients. Streaming worldwide. Ethan's name was mentioned 3 times. Mine, not once. I overheard engineers in the kitchen bragging about impossible performance numbers. There was no upgraded engine. Only my engine, wearing their marketing language like stolen jewelry. Thursday, Ethan called me into his office. Glass walls. City skyline. Cheap confidence. You're valuable, he said. But this company needs to think bigger. Meaning? Titan needs to belong to Ethan, not one person. He slid a transfer agreement across the desk. I didn't touch it. Send it to my lawyer. His smile tightened. There's a launch coming. Then I'd move quickly, I said. By Saturday, panic had begun beneath the surface. A junior engineer texted me. System still calls your security framework 300 plus times during login. They are lying to the board. That was all I needed. Sunday morning, I met my lawyer. We reviewed the cease and desist letter line by line. Patent schedules. Subject. Notice of license termination, Titan Core Systems. 3 attachments. 1 breath. At exactly 10 o'clock, a courier walked into reception carrying a sealed envelope. I watched it travel upstairs. 30 seconds later, executive assistants started moving faster. 1 minute later, my phone rang from a private number. I let it ring. Then came the message. Conference room A. Now? Richard stood at the head of the table. Ethan beside him. Daniel from legal seated quietly. The envelope was open. Pages spread like wounds. What is this? Richard asked. Notice that you no longer have authorization to use my patented systems. Ethan laughed. Your systems? Daniel cleared his throat. Historically, these technologies were licensed from Ms. Hayes pending transfer. Richard snapped toward him. We own this company. Daniel's eyes didn't move. That is not the same as owning patent rights. I walked out shaking so hard I could barely feel my hands. Then I sat at my desk, opened my private dashboard, and revoked every external key connected to my systems. Primary gateway access disabled. Legacy fallback tokens revoked. Authentication bridge offline. 42 seconds. That's how long it took to turn their billion-dollar launch into a decorative slideshow. At 11:14, engineering chat exploded. Why are credentials failing? Who changed access? Stage environment can't authenticate. Security incident. I closed the messages. At 2 p.m., HR emailed me a retroactive IP agreement. Retroactive. They were trying to rewrite the past because the future had already collapsed. Tuesday morning arrived bright and merciless. Cameras lined the stage. Investors filled rows of chairs. Media crews adjusted lenses. Richard wore confidence like armor. Ethan wore a grin that looked stapled on. I stood in the back. Uninvited. Applause. He clicked the demo login. The screen loaded. Then froze. Then flashed. Authentication service unavailable. A murmur moved through the room. He clicked again. Same message. Richard stood up. Consultants rushed to laptops. Investors checked phones. Someone from the press started filming closer. Ethan's face lost all color. For 18 beautiful seconds, nobody spoke. Then chaos found its voice. I turned and walked out before anyone saw me smile. By the end of the week, the board removed Richard. Ethan resigned before they could fire him. 3 lawsuits were settled quietly. And I was offered my old position back with more money than dignity could justify. I declined. I started my own company instead. Because some lessons are too expensive to teach twice. People still ask if revenge felt good. No. Revenge is loud, messy, emotional. What I felt was something quieter. Balance. Because the truth is, some men spend their whole lives mistaking ownership for worth. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one they never bothered to respect. If you've ever been underestimated, remember this. Silence can be strategy. Patience can be power. And the people laughing at you today may be standing in the dark tomorrow, wondering why the lights went out.